Rebecca, thanks so much for coming on today. Before we get started with the episode, can you tell us in the length of a tweet or a tweet thread, what we talked about today?
Where customer success and impact meet, which results in Groundswell and its customers and all of its users having a greater impact on the world around us.
Oh, love that. All right, everyone. Enjoy the show.
I'm Amy Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives.
Cool. So, Rebecca, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. I'm Rebecca Holliday. I'm currently the head of customer success and impact at Groundswell. We're a donation matching and volunteerism platform supporting companies of all sizes to, power their corporate philanthropy, engage employees, and drive impact, most importantly, in the communities that matter most, locally, globally, everywhere in between. I most recently, before Groundswell, was in the nonprofit space. So I worked at CARE, a large international nonprofit organization that focuses on empowering women and girls. So certainly kind of lived and understood issues around fundraising, corporate matching, et cetera, from the nonprofit perspective. And then before that, I was working on the corporate social responsibility team at Chevron. So working on a whole range of issues, human rights, community engagement, et cetera, at Chevron, both in the United States, but also globally, places like Kazakhstan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, partnering with the local community engagement teams for the business units in those regions. So kind of bringing my corporate and nonprofit background to Groundswell allows me to kind of understand where it all meets, and then hopefully use that experience to partner with our customers to drive that impact.
And so who are your standard customers?
We range. We started out a little bit more in the sort of SMB and mid-market space, but we're sort of squarely in partnering more primarily with enterprise customers at this point. But I think our product, what we're proud about is that, it's accessible and usable for companies of all sizes. So I think our smallest customer has 9 employees, and our largest has, I think, upwards of almost about 100,000. So it's a big range, but if you build it right, you can handle the small and the large.
That's sweet. One question I had was a lot of what makes companies like yours successful is a fundamental, very good incentive alignment. Companies are incentivized to give to programs and sort of match what their employees want to give to. And one of the conversations that we had when you came on for the blog was how those incentives are aligned for you at Groundswell, right? You're incentivized to drive impact, which sort of drives the business further. Do you mind going a little bit into your role and kind of how that bit of it works?
Yeah. So, my role sort of marries impact and customer success. And to me, they're kind of one and the same anyway. So, because the more that our customers are thriving and using the platform, and by customers, I mean, the company itself, but then more importantly, all of the employees, the more that they're utilizing Groundswell, taking the action to either volunteer or donate, or the companies are sending corporate grants to nonprofits, that's having the positive impact and sort of hitting our KPIs around, how much money is being sent to those organizations, the diversity of the organizations that are receiving funds, right? That's a really a point of pride for me. Is that we talk about democratizing corporate philanthropy and decentralizing corporate philanthropy and giving employees access to easily browse, choose, find those local organizations that are important to them or where they want to volunteer. And the data speaks to that, right? I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but for one of our customers, out of maybe 10,000 donations that had been made, there were 3,000 or 4,000 unique nonprofit recipients, right? Which is, I think, I think it speaks to then that feedback loop means that, okay, employees feel like they have that agency, they have that choice, and they can utilize, and then, their company is empowering them with that choice. So, I think, I can expand on all of that, but, and then, on the admin side, when, the admins are not having to reach out to me all the time, and they can get in there and really like get the data they need, download the reports they want to report up the chain and make that case, then they get that positive feedback from their own managers, and the program, the giving budget gets renewed for the next year. And it's sort of like a virtuous cycle ultimately.
Just so I understand, and the listeners kind of understand, when you say admin, for who usually runs these programs at companies, right? Is it usually like how's the decision made, right? Like, obviously, as a business owner like myself, like I would love we should be doing this, right? Like I should be encouraging my employees to go out and go volunteering. We should be giving to different charities. It's obviously, from a business perspective, if we're profitable, like there's other incentives to be able to do that. But how does that usually start? Who from the company usually sort of buys the software? Like,
so the question, or the answer is, it depends, frankly. I think when you have smaller companies, SMBs, sort of the mid-market size, they don't necessarily have a dedicated social impact team or CSR team that's kind of like both sort of identifying partners or technology platforms to help power their programs, or even, they don't have teams that are just managing those programs. So oftentimes it would be like someone from HR, or in even smaller companies, it's like the single person from HR, the chief people officer. Sometimes it's like a COO, right? So someone or a chief of staff who kind of has like a catch-all job portfolio, right? Where they're, someone says, oh, we should have a giving program. Okay, so you go you go figure that out. But then I think as we go kind of upmarket into the enterprise space, you see, smaller teams that are really dedicated to the corporate philanthropy program, right? And sometimes it's tied to like a corporate foundation. Other times it's sort of, fully baked into the business. But, whether, those titles kind of change, but, some sort of like community engagement, sometimes it's sort of a impact and sustainability type person, who's charged with both some of the sustainability work, which is sort of distinct from what we are doing in the side of the impact, the social impact, volunteerism side of the house, although they are somewhat related depending on how you structure it. So yeah, that's who we ultimately, initially talk to. And then again, it really depends again on the company and how they're structured in terms of who ultimately the admin is, right? So there's like the buyers, the people who maybe are like exploring the platforms. During that exploration process, they might bring in someone from IT, right? Or from procurement who needs to have eyes on what does this process look like, and what are your kind of like security protocols, data, all that kind of stuff, like kicking the tires and kind of like that due diligence. But then when it comes to implementing Groundswell, onboarding the company and getting launched, that when I say the word admin, that's really who we're talking about, who would be sort of my point of, or someone on my team's point of contact moving forward. So they're the ones who, are sending, teeing up the communications about the program launch, reminding employees about the benefit or about the program and the opportunity to match, et cetera, depending on what the program is. And then also those are the ones who we are sending product update emails to, or other resources. Like I'm getting ready to send out a big set of resources around Giving Tuesday and giving season, right? Because this is when so much happens. People are, realizing, ooh, it's getting towards the end of the year. It's time to donate. It's time to let me take advantage of my company match before it ends at, it resets on January 1st. So, and then those admins are themselves, again, maybe doing some of that internal reporting across departments or up the chain. And so they're in Groundswell, in the Groundswell admin portal, which is a distinct product separate from the employee view. And they're able to kind of, get what they need. I like to think, we continue to kind of like beef up the reporting options and just always improving that UI to make sure it's a best in class experience that reduces the burden on those folks who likely are doing a million other jobs at the same time.
And how much, when you think about the customer experience and driving that success, with that big of a range of who the kind of primary owner can be, from a generalist on a team of 9 to a specialist on a team of 100,000, like how do you what are the data points you look for, or the steps where you try and capture and identify the differences, and how do you change the way you interact with them and try and excite them?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because I think for some, our toolkit around, Hispanic Heritage Month might be, like nothing new, or something that, maybe they're already kind of familiar with that. Or maybe let me pick a different example. Or even just the concept of Giving Tuesday, right? Folks may already have a playbook in place, or they already have that experience. They've been running these programs. They know the drill. And for others, it's like, you're just trying to put it in front of them and make them realize it is a thing. Maybe they aren't even tracking Giving Tuesday, right? So there is a huge range of knowledge, existing knowledge, even like expertise in this space. I think we also try not to push too hard. Like, we don't want to be flooding people's inboxes. And I think we aren't afraid to we're not afraid to shy away from giving them meatier, kind of more sophisticated content. So like disaster response, you could boil it down to something like really simple, like, donate during a disaster, but it's really complex. And the role of companies, it can, there's sort of like a do no harm. Like some companies send their products, in a disaster, like, oh, there was an example of sending frozen chicken, because that was the company had that, and they sent it to this disaster zone and it rotted, right? That's like an extreme example, but I think there are ways that we can be educating our admins, whether they're, kind of like more, less steeped in the space, and those who are super knowledgeable, and maybe bring some of them along who are, maybe starting from scratch. So it is a balance, though. And I think we always want to make sure the content is engaging. It's not too academic or philosophical. We also want to really respect the diversity of the companies that are on our platform. And so we don't want to be preaching or even weighing too heavily on one side or the other of some of these social issues that, depending on what part of the country your company is in and your employee base, that's another consideration that we take into account. So, and also a longer conversation, but and it really sometimes comes down to the conversations that are had during launch or implementation. It's just what's important to your company, right? So some companies, they care how much money gets to the nonprofits, right? Both the employee donations, and if there's a match program, the matching dollars, and including in that, maybe special campaigns where it was boosted or 2x matched or something, right? Others, it's how many people how many of my employees are participating and engaging in the platform, right? So right now we have a customer, they have about 6,000 employees. They're growing rapidly. They keep acquiring new companies. They're growing, they're expanding, et cetera. And so for them, engagement and participation on the platform through giving or volunteering is the metric, but they're agnostic about, they don't care if it's a certain number of, a certain, volume of hours or amount of money, right? That kind of is secondary. So for them right now, every month they want to see 175 net new employees engage on the platform, right? So, so you have your power users, right? But they're looking beyond the power users, right? Whereas other companies might be happy with the power users being the source of the important metrics around lots of volunteer hours logged or lots of, dollars driven to the nonprofits, and then some are just they're happy with a degree of participation and a degree of donation volume, but they're not, they're happy enough that this benefit exists and that the employees are content. We try to still get them to try to maybe, try to improve year over year, right? So we start to, that's, as we grow and mature, we are able to, show that kind of year over year. And some of our customers, one of the like HRIS fields that they import into the system is like hire date, right? And so that gets to the question around employee retention. That's like a longer term view, right? You have to kind of like wait and be patient for that data and kind of see if you can like have some kind of before and after, I guess insights about, and employee retention is a many factors. Obviously, it can't be, there's like, correlation versus causation, but it certainly comes up.
I need like definitions just to have my brain right where, I kind of think in like flowcharts. And so to me, it sounds like there's a distinction between like customer and user almost, or like two different user types to some level, where, there's the admin who's buying it, has a whole different app that they're using. Then there's all the employees that you want to your point in the last question, right? Some companies are looking for maximal engagement. So you're somehow trying to get employees to download your app and create an account and log in and start to log volunteer hours or donate. There's a level of life cycle for those employees to try and get them to be more active and donate more, volunteer more, whatever. And there's also let's stop there. What is that right? Is it sort of your responsibility or partially your responsibility at Groundswell to do the marketing to the employees and get them to be active and involved?
Yeah. So you're right. It's we do see ourselves as having kind of two products, right? An admin-facing product, which is a web-based application, and then the user-facing product, which is both a mobile app and a web platform. We actually started with mobile for our employees, for our users, believing that in today's day and age, most people are on the go and do so much on their phones. And I think that's still the case. And it's a really interesting for us selling point when it comes to conversations and sales conversations with companies that have a large percentage of undesked workers, right? Warehouse workers, frontline staff, utilities companies, you fill in the blank, where you do not have, they're not sitting behind a computer, much less checking email, right? So, but then as we have grown and the size of some of the companies where they're either have both desk and undesked, or, you're a more traditional kind of big enterprise company where most people are behind a desk, we needed to have both products. So, that's how we think about it. And then the sort of, outreach, the product marketing emails, et cetera, are kind of like bifurcated, right? So we have one where the audience is, hey, admins, we've just released a bunch of new reporting features and tools, right? Users don't care about that, right? But it's, the admins can, it helps make their jobs easier when it comes to the internal reporting requirements that are ongoing, or certainly end of, the sustainability or CSR reporting seasons, et cetera. And we're always trying to find ways to, like, again, everyone has different formats for their reporting, et cetera. So we also want to make sure, like, we have a reporting API that goes back into their own system. So if they have their own kind of dashboards and, let's say, Power BI, they can slice and dice, in their own unique ways, but also kind of, use different fields and HRIS fields and other kind of ways to, like, we have like reporting thematic pillars where you can like map those to the sustainable development goals, if that's a priority for your company or not. And then for our users, and those admins also get things like these sort of like cause toolkits, right? Okay, it's, like I said, giving season, right? We're sending out a bunch of resources to the admins next week to kind of gear up for giving season. The users or employees will receive more like, inspiration for giving this month, and we'll kind of offer up some suggested nonprofits and point them to the different parts of the product, the app, where they can browse and donate. We will also send them like sort of product updates that are relevant for them as users, right? So you can earn a dividend now on your balance in Groundswell, and so we, certain things that are unique to the end users, we'll reach out to them. We'll, push out to them. And again, some of it's kind of seasonal. Obviously, if there's some big emergent event where, we can like quickly get messages out to all of our users to say, hey, there's a mass Cat 5 hurricane in the Gulf Coast, here are the organizations that are responding. Here's how you can support, right? So people do look for that in those kind of like moments we say like moments that matter. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, that's fascinating. On the moments that matter, that's a really interesting one because, obviously there is, as you know from your time at USAID, there is always something somewhere where people just need help. How do you kind of temper those and not just like be just hammering people with like, people need help, and figuring out that right cadence?
It's a really, really great question because people can get like disaster fatigue. I mean, there's even a conversation, not at Groundswell, but I think more generally, like, are we becoming numb to gun violence, right? These incidents at schools, right? So I don't have a perfect answer for that. I think there's part of it is like, as we evolve and kind of have more sophisticated kind of like targeting in terms of like, okay, you live in the UK, here's a collection of issues, cause areas, nonprofits that would be most relevant for you versus you living in the United States, right? So we're kind of heading in that direction of I would say a degree of segmentation in terms of like our global user kind of population. But I think there's also, I don't want to use the word responsibility, but an opportunity. If I put my like impact hat on, there's like a crisis in Sudan right now, right? And I don't think people are paying attention to it, and maybe they don't want to, but I think there is an opportunity to like highlight that. And, even if it's not going to drive the same volume of donations that the Maui fires did, right? For US based users, that's okay. I mean, that is perfectly like understandable and reasonable. You are, the things that are happening most close to you, right? Whether it's in your own country or in your community, that's going to drive, your engagement, and that's fair. But I think it's also, there are opportunities to bring awareness to and try to spotlight on sort of, broader issues. But again, you don't want to then flood everyone's inbox every day with like the next crisis, because then they'll just start to put blinders on and it won't resonate. So we are very careful about when we like both put new kind of like emergent event content in the product, and then even more careful about when we blast our users with like an email.
I actually think that's actually really interesting. Sean, this kind of goes back to like the marketing and personalization elements that we talk about in a lot of the other podcasts. And Rebecca, you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but how do we make that choice, right? Like, is it like pretty like kind of manual? Hey, we know that we want to, the Sudan example that you just gave. Do you guys have like a team that kind of decides, hey, from like a marketing standpoint, we think that this portion of our populace cares the most about it? Or is it like, is there sort of like a personalization element? Like if I'm in California, I'm much more likely to donate to the California wildfires, whereas like your employees and your customers that have employees in London or in the UK are not going to do that as much. Is there kind of like a system to do that? Or do you guys have like a team? Is it kind of decided on a manual ad hoc basis? Is it just kind of pseudo random? How does that kind of work? Or if that's not the question you want to answer, like how should that work, right? Who does make that choice?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So right now we don't have that kind of like geographic segmentation so like our users. So there's two ways if we think about like curated content, like we call them spotlights. So it's like, it's World Alzheimer's Awareness Month, I think, or Hunger Action Month in the United States is in September. All of our users can see that collection right now. But there's also companies admins can go in and create their own spotlights that only their employees see, right? So, that's where some of that, and we really promote that, right? Because like, it can, depending on, like certain cause areas. There's one of our customers where like, they have a whole campaign around like employees who are sick in the workplace. Like how do you support people who are working with cancer, right? And they have a whole campaign around it. And so it's very like, it's like personal to them for various reasons, right? And so we always like really encourage that. Eventually we will say like, if you're in California, you will be kind of like served up at the top, the top line will be those so issues that even like the nuances of topics that are relevant everywhere, homelessness, for instance, right? but it's not maybe not going to be as relevant in Nebraska as it is in like the coasts or where you see the bigger challenges. Not to get, I know it's like that's your topic, so feel free to weigh in. But I think like the way in which you talk about it and the root causes and all of those, like the complexities of it cannot be boiled down to like one single message or one single like collection of nonprofits at like a national level. But Sean, I think you have something to say about that topic.
No, I was actually just trying to unmute myself and hit the wrong button, but I did love that you picked Nebraska just because Ibby's from Nebraska, and so it warms my heart that your random example.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
But hold on, I didn't answer though about like how the decision making, and I'll be look, it's a bit art, a bit science, right? I think like you can pretty quickly tell what issues are like seizing people's attention, and like the media is latching onto it, and it is it's not proportionate always to the size of or the severity of the issue or the disaster, say, right? Last year there was like, I think it's flooding in Pakistan and an earthquake in Morocco, but certainly like the fires in Maui got more attention and resources from U.S. based donors, probably, right? I'm making a leap, maybe, but I'm pretty sure that's probably the case.
I think that there's like a lot of art, especially on the Morocco earthquake versus the Maui fires one. I think that there's actually like a lot of,
and they were close in time, I think, right?
Yeah, I think I can't remember who it was, but I remember reading an article about the fact that like I think that they were actually at the exact same time, but I think the Morocco earthquake followed the Maui fires and or something, and there was like a pretty big article about you mentioned the term. There's a term for this where people are just being asked to donate too much.
Fatigue, like there's like disaster fatigue.
Yeah, the disaster fatigue thing is, I think that's when I first kind of heard that term. So that's super interesting. It sounds like what y'all are doing is you're putting the onus on like the person that knows the best about what somebody wants to donate to is kind of like the employer, where they're like, hey, like I'm an employer in Nebraska. I know that my populace cares about these like 6 things, so I'm going to choose to like try to highlight them. And so you're giving them the option of putting that in the platform. You've built the platform around kind of maximizing what the group of people that you're selling to wants to be able to donate to, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a sort of like a yes and, right? Because I think we also want to make sure that again, when push comes to shove, there's like the curation, but there's also just the data set of nonprofits, right? So that ultimately people can donate where they want to. And so, I think historically companies would, and it's not a knock to this model, but like the United Way campaign, it was like, okay, donate to the United Way, and then they're going to go, send the funds out to the nonprofits that need it. It's like they're, I think we are also an intermediary, but a kind of different variety of that, right? Where like we are like the technology, like the interface, but at the end of the day, users have that agency to go in and find that exact nonprofit that they want to support. And so I think, I think there's like, we want to, certainly companies have like priority areas or, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we really promote that like broad choice because, you don't know, you might say that your company's priorities are around like climate and STEM education, but like, let me tell you how many people love animals, right? And the data shows it. So you don't want to, or LGBTQ rights issues, right? So I think it's like, and we also talk about philanthropy being deeply personal, right? And so, creating space for that as well.
This is probably a terrible analogy, but it's the best I can do right now. It's almost like to your point, the United Way would be like an index fund. And so people could invest in just like, hey, I'm doing the index fund or a set fund by my bank. And now you guys are coming in to kind of look that democratization of investments, and you can pick the stocks you want based on your beliefs, your priorities, what you think you know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, one actually, I have a question on that specifically, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but you're the person I know that knows the most about this, Rebecca. Do you feel like with how globalized the world has become in some capacity, like news is on our phone at all times, like people do have more of like a vested stake in it, like donating is become a lot more personal because people have access to a lot more information about the world. The internet like since 2001 has kind of made the earth of the world a little bit smaller. Do you feel like things like the United Way, while they're probably incredibly impactful organizations, the shift is going more towards like, hey, I'm actually like an educated consumer. Consumer is the wrong word here, but I'm an educated citizen and like what things I want to donate to. And so that's why platforms like yours can be fundamentally a lot more successful. Because I remember when I was a kid, like my parents' companies would do these really, really large scale campaigns for platforms like the United Way. Like there was always like a United Way thing. I think like we do that for school too. Like I can't remember, but we were always encouraged to like donate to these like larger organizations that would then like distribute the funds however they saw fit.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Yes, your like access to information and I think a greater awareness about issues locally, globally, I think are more accessible to everyone. But I think also the nonprofits themselves have the tools and the means to reach people, reach their donors without needing an intermediary. And again, I don't want to be knocking the United Way because I think they play an important role. And we've been having conversations with a number of United Ways about how we can partner and like help them I think there's ultimately can be complementary because I think there's still, people want to donate to the United Way. They trust the United Way. It's an important brand. So, but also I think that sort of advances in just websites and fintech and all the things allow the nonprofits to be indirectly, interfacing with donors. And that's what the nonprofits want as well, right? Then they have direct access to follow up and get more donations, et cetera. And then they can do the marketing themselves. So I think there's a couple of reasons why sort of that older model is maybe a little bit less relevant or maybe, having to make room for the new players or the new ways, if that makes sense.
I think, you have two different users, the employees in the corporate teams. And even within the corporate teams, they have different goals you set up. Some want max engagement by head count, some want max engagement by dollar amount. How do you identify what success is for them and then pull that through to all your comms, all your touch points?
Yeah, I mean, it starts from like the earliest conversations, and sometimes it's me going back to even to the sales calls, right, where you can kind of understand, well, why are they talking to us in the first place? What's motivating even the person making the decision about what they're looking for, and then really importantly during that implementation onboarding phase, not only the nuts and bolts of getting them onto the platform and getting ready to launch, but what does success look like for that company? And again, as you say, that varies. For some, it's about enrollment and just sheer participation, whether it's through donations, through volunteer hours. They want their employees to take action in the platform. For others, it's like, how can we drive as many dollars as possible to organizations, to causes out in the community, and maybe to certain ones that are important for the company. And then, in order to kind of, I guess, sort of respond to those varying definitions or criteria for success and impact, or those KPIs that different companies have, we really try to build both a flexible enough product that they can utilize the tools and utilize the product in different ways to engage employees, to design different programs or campaigns to drive that engagement. We have a really, really great volunteer management system that allows companies to work with remote employees or, different locations or a big event, right? Large and small. And then it's really about the reporting flexibility, right? We have a reporting API, so you can pull all that data back into, your own company's system. Let's say it's Power BI, but also download the reports and view those dashboards and be able to see, the different types of engagement and kind of zero in on the ones that are maybe important for your leadership or important for your own internal KPIs.
This has been great. I messaged Sean a couple of weeks ago being like, hey, we really need to have Rebecca on the podcast because this has been fascinating. Sean, I don't know if you have anything to say, but I think we should let Rebecca also if there's anything, Rebecca, you want to anything you want to tell anything you want to tell the listeners about how maybe they can get in touch with Groundswell if they want to incorporate it into their companies, who they should shout at if they should buy Groundswell? Like, tell us.
Oh yeah, I mean, we welcome any and all conversations. We always love to get a chance to just like demo our product. So our website is groundswell.io. And there you can kind of get a feel for the donation matching, the volunteering bits. We're also, we've got a couple other kind of meaty product, I would say kind of like fully separate, but related. I don't want to say features because it's really bigger than a feature, coming up kind of end of this year, early next year. So I'll leave it at that because I don't want to spill the beans, but, yeah, like we're growing and excited to, I think be meeting companies and more importantly, meeting employees like where they are. And that means like, what we've built, we're so proud of what we built. It's natively built. Like we're not growing by acquisition. Like we're, and that means it's a best in class experience, for all involved. And so, I'm pumped. I get to like go to work and I bust my butt every day and have a positive impact on this world. And so I feel like I'm the luckiest person around. Right. Truly. I mean, it's great. I mean that, like, I truly mean that. I feel very lucky.
I don't think the listeners can see us smiling there, which is why she said that, everyone. That's awesome. I love that a lot. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's been a great conversation. We'll do a part 2 one day.